In this talk, I'm going to present 3 practical reasons to pursue a PhD. So the main disclaimer of this talk is that it's most relevant to STEM majors. So let's get right down to it. What is a PhD? At a high level, a PhD means producing new knowledge. So when you're an undergrad, your job was to absorb existing knowledge and to master it so that you could apply it in the world. To do a PhD, you need to be able to produce new knowledge in a given subfield. Conceptually, here's how it works. So there's you in a box in the middle. You take as inputs existing work in the form of research papers. You read these papers, you kind of understand what the state of the art is in some field. You also take as input packages of files representing, say, source code or data sets that you need to analyze. And the third input you get is discussions with your colleagues to make sense of the existing work that's out there and figure out how you can make a contribution that's novel and that improves upon the state of the art. So with all these inputs combined, a lot of hard work, you end up producing as output a peer-reviewed research paper. If you do this several times, you produce, say, 3 papers, you can wrap them together into what's called a PhD dissertation, and then you get your degree. On average, it takes about 5 to 7 years of your time, and you're getting paid a salary of around $15K to $25K a year. So the thing to notice about doing a PhD is you're actually getting paid a salary. It's a job that you're doing to produce research. Why pursue a PhD? Everybody has very personal reasons, and there's a wide gamut of responses to this question. But the title of this talk is 3 practical reasons. And I feel like that the 3 practical reasons to pursue a PhD all boil down to one overall theme, which is to trade money for freedom. So I'm going to illustrate what I mean by that. So here's a graph. On the y-axis, it shows the annual salary of a job. And on the x-axis, it shows some degree of freedom that you have. So as a new STEM grad, you have to get a job. You have to do something. And as a new graduate, the jobs you're going to get are going to have to trade off money and freedom. So on one extreme, I have friends who got jobs right out of college in the financial industry, and they're paid quite a lot of money, but they actually have very little freedom. Their jobs are very structured and very regulated. In the middle is a variety of engineering jobs where you're getting paid a pretty good salary, but you have a bit more creative freedom than, say, if you're in the financial sector. And on the other extreme is going to grad school to get a PhD. You're getting paid very little money, 15 to 25K a year, but you have a tremendous amount of freedom. So what kind of freedoms do you have as a grad student doing your PhD? First one is to make a name for yourself. You also have the freedom to fail in a safe environment. And finally, you have the freedom to choose from more jobs later on after you graduate. First is make a name for yourself. When you're doing your PhD, at age 22, you are paid to initiate, collaborate on, and promote your own projects. I've worked in industry in various companies, and I've talked to friends in a lot of different organizations. In no other job can you, as a new employee at age 22, initiate, collaborate on, and promote your own projects. So what do I mean by that? That means that you actually get to do everything end to end from start to finish, from formulating your ideas to spending a lot of time executing on your ideas, building prototypes, running experiments, doing studies, to selling your ideas in the form of writing research papers, giving presentations, persuading others why your idea actually works. So in an industrial organization, all these 3 stages are done by different sets of people. So the idea formulation comes from above, from suits, from the C-level executives, from middle managers, from other sorts of people who set the high-level direction. The executing stage happens on engineering teams. So there'll be a lot of senior engineers on your team, plus you, since you're the junior engineer on the team. And you're all working together to execute and to create this product. And then you hand it off to the salespeople, to the project managers who try to sell this project within the organization, to sales teams, to marketing teams, to PR teams. Whereas in grad school, you get a chance to practice and do all of this on your own with help and mentorship from others, of course. But you get to really develop a variety of skill sets that you would not be able to do as much if you're in industry. Another thing that's really fun about being in grad school is collaborations. So toward the end of grad school, I told my advisor, hey, I met this Harvard professor at a conference and pitched a collaboration idea to her. Can I spend a semester there? And he was like, sure, go ahead. And I spent a semester at Harvard working on a research project with a professor there that ended up being the final portion of my dissertation there. And we ended up publishing a paper off it. So I was at Stanford then, and she was at Harvard, and we co-authored a paper together. Now imagine me in a company trying to do this, right? So let's say I'm at Google and I tell my boss, hey, I met this Facebook engineer at a conference and want to hook our code together. Can I hack there next week? Of course, nobody would ever allow that to happen. Right? That's unheard of in industry, to be working together with engineers at a rival company. The only ways that companies collaborate is if their leadership decides, oh, maybe it's actually beneficial for our companies to decide and deal with one another to collaborate. And on a related note, this culture of confidentiality and secrecy is a default in many areas of industry. So this is part of an employment contract that you have to sign whenever you join. Confidential information means that anything you see in this organization is by default confidential. You can't talk to anybody about it outside of the organization unless we give you special permission to. So secrecy is the default. And last one is invention assignment, which means that anything you do while working at this organization belong to this company and they don't really belong to you. It makes it really hard for you to initiate and promote your own projects because whatever you're doing is property of the company. So why care about this? Why care about making a name for yourself? In the coming decades, as jobs get more competitive, your public portfolio makes you stand out and opens up interesting career opportunities. And if you built up a career working on things that you can't really easily show publicly, it just makes it a lot harder for you to go to new places or find new opportunities. And a PhD is one way to build up a public portfolio of work. The second benefit of a PhD is that you have the freedom to fail in a safe environment. So at age 22, you're paid to fail repeatedly without hurting your career. Again, I've talked to friends in all sorts of industries, and in no other industry can you fail several times without taking a hit on your reputation in your career. So here are some ways that every PhD student fails. Your ideas will get bashed, your prototypes will break, your experiments will flop, your collaborators will flake out on you, your papers will get rejected often multiple times, and your talks will get trashed. So why subject yourself to all of this pain over 5 years while getting paid so little money? And this report issued by the US Department of Education really sums up a lot of the benefits of this sort of trial by fire. It's pretty widely acknowledged now that these traits of grit, tenacity, and perseverance are just so important in anything you end up doing professionally that being able to have a safe environment where you can practice those skills is just really valuable. So I'm going to go back to my graph here of freedom versus money. So if you're in a high-paid, high-stakes industry like finance, if you fail, you get fired. I have friends who've gotten fired several times from different financial firms because they failed to meet a performance quota or they failed to do something that their bosses wanted. In the middle is engineering firms. So at good engineering companies, if you fail in your project, it doesn't work that well, you're not going to get fired, especially if you're a new employee. They'll cut you some slack. But the problem is that even if you're not going to get fired, your career quickly gets stifled. So when you're in engineering, you're going to get quarterly performance reviews of how you're doing on your project and how you're progressing. And if you're trying something too wild or experimental and things aren't working out, and for some reason or another, you're just not really cutting it, you're going to suffer on your reviews. And your colleagues who are working on more well-set projects that are more safe are going to get rewarded more for it. And eventually what happens is that they're going to get promoted faster than you are. If you keep on failing in these projects, your career will get stifled. So lastly, in grad school, when you're doing your PhD, you're getting paid so little money. So failure is really seen as an opportunity to grow. And professors know that students are researchers in training, so they'll facilitate your growth in there. And everybody fails. Professors fail, senior researchers fail. Failure is just sort of inherent in the process of doing research. So it really provides a safe environment for you to grow from such failures. So why care? If you're going to be in an environment where everyone is pretty smart and pretty motivated, the thing that will set you apart in terms of finding success and happiness in your work are these traits of grit, tenacity, and perseverance, how you can bounce back from inevitable failures rather than getting paralyzed. The last practical reason for doing a PhD is that after your PhD, more jobs will be open to you than when you graduated from college. So here's a chart of some jobs that are available to bachelor's and master's graduates in a STEM field. After your PhD, a wide array of new jobs open to you. This is not the only sort of job you can get with your PhD. If you're keeping up to date with technology and such, all the existing jobs you could have gotten out of your bachelor's and master's, you can still get now with your PhD. Of course, the main caveat is you're going to be 5 to 7 years older and you're not going to have as much money as your peers. But assuming that your career lasts 30, 40, or even 50 years, because people are living longer nowadays, just having more options open is a great thing. So again, why care? Rapid pace of technological change and globalization is going to mean that jobs that you think are safe now might not be safe in the future. So just having as many options as possible open to you is always going to be a good thing. So I'm going to end the talk with the flip side of why not to pursue a PhD. The first one is uncertainty. So by nature, research is very uncertain. You don't know day to day how you're going to progress. You're going to have many days or even weeks at a time where you're working on something and you're going down a dead end that's just not working out, or you have to trash several months worth of work because you're going down a wrong path. So uncertainty is just really hard to grapple with day to day. On a related note, a lot of grad students suffer from isolation because by definition, you're one of the only people in the world working on pushing the state of the art in your specific, very specialized niche. And lastly, you don't have as much money as your peers in your 20s. So I put poverty in quotes because you're not truly poor, right? You're not truly, like the majority of the people in the world who are actually living in real poverty. So if you don't like these traits that people run into in grad school, I think it's a good idea to go in industry right after graduating. So in industry, instead of uncertainty, you get a lot of short-term payoffs. By definition, a lot of industrial projects are structured with short-term milestones and payoffs in mind, and things are a lot more certain. You're progressing forward at a steady rate and you feel satisfied making steady progress. The opposite of isolation is structured teamwork. Industry is really good at figuring out how to put structure around projects, assigning teams, giving you senior mentors and senior engineers to really guide you along. And lastly, you're just making a lot more money. You're making 3 to 5 times more money than you would be in grad school. So if you really want the money in your 20s to enjoy life with, then going to industry right away is obviously a good idea.